So we're gonna get going. So how many of you were here a couple weeks ago when we did the buyers and sellers contracts? Remember that? Might have been. Okay. So I was thinking of going over the purchase agreement documents today. Am I jumping too far ahead for a lot of you? Okay, so we'll start there. Does that sound fair? Quite a few people online too. We do this twice a month, so usually around the beginning of the month, I'll do like the buyer's docs, the listing docs. And then I'll cover some of the other documents that we need to fill out. So in your tools, you fill everything out with the transaction debts. All right. You gotta think. So there's, in the transaction desk, we have the classic forms, and now we're gonna have a new area, a new dashboard to look at and to go through. So the classic forms are still there. Unfortunately, we're not able to change our packet to the current forms because it cut that off, and I'm having them look into that. So today, what I'm gonna do is show you the new transaction area. And it will ask you the difference if you want the classic when you sign in, or if you want the new one and then you create your account. It is not really a whole lot different. They're trying to create more of a dashboard that you're accustomed to using in command and keeping track of your transaction and where you're at. Okay. So in this area here, up in the transaction area, I have created a couple packets, and I hope I have them all done. They're under templates. Can you guys see this in your templates? At all? If you're in the new one. And we're just learning how to do all this area. So when you went in, are you still in the old one? Okay.
Yeah. It's northstarmls.com.
I had no idea. So does anybody see that in there at all? Because I created these and I don't know if people are actually seeing them.
Under deal tracker, I'm not seeing anything.
You're not seeing that, okay, so I'll have to do some looking into it some more, but when your buyer writes an offer, even in the old section, we do have packet of KWS buyers offer PA, but like some of the forms have not all been updated. So this is the most updated one, and I wanted to create a new packet, but they wouldn't let me. So, but I'll try again. So in these packets, the first thing you always start with, oops, no, not that one, that's new construction. You start with the purchase agreement, okay? And in here, guess what? We're gonna put our date in. And we're gonna type in our buyers' names, unless we've had them. Now, mind you, there is a wizard to do this, but I'm not there yet, okay? I'm learning this with the new forms. Do you want me to go back to the classic?
I was able to get a transaction desk.
You want me to go back to the original? Okay, let's do that, okay?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That, I don't mean to confuse anybody, but
So, cause hers isn't showing the drop down to get to the new one.
the new one, okay. And that won't do that until it pops up and you have two boxes and it asks you to create that account. And all you're doing is creating a sign in so that you go to Lone Wolf, I think it is, or Wolf Loan,
Yeah.
their website. Okay, but then it connects you into the North Star also.
So hers will say broker dashboard, but yours will say agent dashboard.
Okay, so let's go in here. Let me see if I can find a buyer that we've had a while back ago. So I'm gonna take John Smith. I've done this stuff before. His forms are in here.
Yeah, for
And I want to go in and I want to add the forms for the purchase agreement. I'll find them today. what I'm trying to get at is we have this packet over here in the templates. All created and it has the buyer's reps in here, but we don't have permission to change the forms down here, but we want to use all the current ones that we're working with. So. I didn't find this out very well. Well, let's go into a single family home. We'll take one from. Safe searches, we'll take one from our market center. Create a password right here. Only can I have you up in Chisholm. Up here, there is this little button down here that says Minnesota Realtor Forms. You see that there? You can go ahead and you can click on there. There we go. See, so now it's talking classic and it's talking the created one and the new one. Okay. So to help you guys today, we're gonna go ahead and stay in the classic. But this is going at some time, but they have not told me when. So in here, I'm gonna pull up my template. And we do have the KWS buyer offer / PA 2025. That's the one that we can't update some of the forms. So if you're in here, just please check your forms, make sure you have an updated one. It's pulling in the MLS number. And you should always check your forms to make sure that you are current, okay? Even if we create the packets. So it comes in here and it has just dumped all the detail in from the listing. Run and click. And in here, if you want, this is part of a database thing, you can put the date that your offer's in there, otherwise it's gonna be in command for you. And in here I have, this is the agent, this is us, me, and my client in here. My client is in my contacts. So I'm gonna go in and find my contact person with this one. And then on here, it says legal name in case they do have a legal name and you're calling them by a shorter name. What's their preferred signature? This is what's gonna show up on all their forms to be signed and their initials to be signed. Okay. Next. And now we're into all the forms that could possibly be needed, okay? So right now, we're not gonna do an amendment, so you can go ahead and delete this. We can always get these back if we need them. All right, and I'm not gonna spend some time deleting these because they all just uploaded and the PA did not upload it. Purchase agreement didn't come in for me, so I'm gonna come in here. And get the purchase agreement, which after all the amendments is down at the bottom. So always when you're doing this, make sure that you always have the most current. Our forms change August 1st every year. And sometimes, yes, you'll go in here for the next 5 years and it might say August 2025, but you've been using them every single time you do a transaction, so you know what's the most current. And we're gonna check in the box and we're gonna add that to our basket. We can open it up here. Slow. Okay, so always make sure you put the date in here, the date that you're writing your offer. This thing gets in my way. There we go. I put my seller's name in there. How much earnest money are they going to put down? $5,000. That will type it up here. We only check this box if they're gonna bring a physical check into the listing office. Otherwise, with box on check, the $5,000 earnest money is gonna go through the trust fund. Okay, It auto-populated me, for me, the address. So I don't have to type that in the county. Put in the legal description of the property. And then down here, and this has kind of been one of the things, these are all the things that are in the house that are attached. Someone brought it up to my attention, and it is probably true, because it says refrigerator right here. That's referring to a built-in refrigerator. Any refrigerator that's in the house is on wheels or wheeled out because it is not. So, if you notice brand new appliances in the home, take a picture of them. Take down, if you can find the serial number, find it's a brand, and you can just add this in here. KitchenAid, seen on this date. You know, you can add that in here. If you don't, most people do leave the fridges, but just in case someone does put some stuff in there, or the agent note says that they're taking the fridge in the kitchen, but they'll leave the fridge in the garage, but your buyers want the one in the kitchen. You see what I mean? You want to make sure that you ask for it, because if it's not in writing, it doesn't hold up later.
You have to make sure you put every single, like, appliance on the wall.
You could go in there, you could put appliances seen in the kitchen as of, in the date that you were in there. Sometimes it's just mainly putting the brand in there, just to make sure that you can identify it. It is a recommendation, if the washer and dryer are in the house and it is not written that it's staying, you can write that in there, and the washer and dryer is seen on this date. Okay. And then, because fixtures are these TVs being held on the back, correct? Those are supposed to stay in the home. And you can write it into your contract that you want the seller to take them out if your buyer doesn't want them in that spot. They might not replace the holes, patch it up and that, but they'll remove it. All right,
Okay, so Connie, isn't it recommended to do a personal property addendum too?
personal property would be like the couch, the hot tub, the pool table. That type of stuff that the lender does not want to finance. But the lender does not want to see the personal property agreement. Okay, because they're only financing what is in the house, attached to the house. Think of it that way.
Okay,
You know, if we get as busy as we have been, you might want to write in that you want that shed in the backyard. Because it might be on skids and they could pull it right out. So think about that when you're going through the homes, looking at the homes. You see a nice cabinet, do you think that it's attached? Try to look around, ask the listing agent, is the cabinet in the dining room attached? If it's attached, you're gonna wanna write it in.
Hmm.
Or you're just gonna gamble, it's gonna be there or not be there. Okay,
Say that again.
what?
If it's attached, you still want to write it in.
You
right,
might want to on something like that. Cause like my dining room hutch is attached to my wall. It would take an awful lot of work for me to take that out as a seller.
right.
And if I was a buyer in today's world, after living with that, I would probably want someone to remove that so I could put what I want in there. In that little cubby.
They really, really want it. You want to get it in there strong.
Yeah, if people want. I mean, I've had an offer written where somebody wanted, I put it in the agent notes that this piece was not gonna be sold with the house, the kitchen. And they wrote it in the offer. And I turned around and said, we won't accept the offer with that in there. So, you know, you just have to make sure when you're reading your offers you received and you're writing your offers that you're asking for exactly what the clients want.
And they had one where there was a huge like refrigerator that was garbage. And so you kind of have to write that in there too, that it will be removed prior to final walkthrough.
There's things like that. So I mean, when you are out in these properties, you need to listen to your client. And if they're interested in writing an offer, you're making note, taking pictures.
Right,
And that, so, okay, purchase price. What is your client gonna offer for the home? Let's pop back here and just take a look. This one was listed at $386,999 and is at $365. So we are going to go, We'll just do it simple, 365. One more zero. All right. Percentage of cash that they're gonna put down. This is part of their earnest money. So a lot of times, if it's, FHA, it is what, about 5%? Conventional's 3.5. Some people will put more down. So we're gonna make this one look a little bit better. We're gonna put 20% in there. And you have to equal, remember, between 1 and 4, you have to equal 100%. So if they're gonna go ahead and get a mortgage, that's gonna be 80. So we have 100% between the two of them. All right, if they're gonna assume part of the loan and they're gonna get financing for the loan, you gotta figure those numbers out. Just go to basically more than whole number. You don't have to get out there, 20.125 or something like that. Okay, because all the cash exchanging will happen between the title and what the lender's doing.
So if we don't know, we just put in 100% mortgage. 100%.
If they're not putting any money down, if they're
Yes.
putting no earnest money down, if they're not gonna put any money down or they can put money down at closing, but if they're gonna tell the seller, I'm buying your house, but I'm gonna 100% finance. Because when the seller's looking at it, they're going, oh, how much do they have invested in this property? If it's 100% financing, well, they carried through to the closing. If they're putting 20% down and a 5% earnest money, that shows that they're invested.
Is that a minimum of 3.5%?
I think 3.5, 3.5.
For normal, yeah, unless
Yeah.
you're VA. VA is the only one that you can go.
That'd be only one.
Standard
VA's
most people.
MBA also backs the financing of it. The reason I did the 20% here is the 20% will get rid of the PMI on the loan.
Right.
And you might see a lot of move-up sellers have that 20%. And you will also see maybe some of the first-time buyers who have stayed at home after school and they have saved so they can put their first 20% down. And then a closing date. Closing dates are really important, something to be in contact with your lender. Your lender has to have time to get the paperwork and everything closed, get the loan through. So don't promise that you can close in 10 days unless you talk to the lender. And don't stretch it out forever because the seller doesn't want to sit there and wait to close. Rule of thumb in the past has been about roughly 40 days, sometimes less. So if your lender can close in 20 days, then go for it. I really need a little bit more room, so we're just gonna bump this out to the 19th. It's kind of half and half. All right, so then down here now, the address and everything is carried. The purchase agreement, we're writing it for the first time on this property. So, oh, I'm sorry, I'm jumping in. Is subject to mortgage, okay? And it is going to be a first mortgage. Or is it gonna be, or are they gonna get some type of Minnesota program and they might have some other financing on it? And what kind of financing are they gonna have? So we have 20% down, we're gonna go with conventional. But it might be a VA and that will tell them why there isn't a down payment. And FHA, United States USDA, and then other would be some type of other financing that maybe the buyer has. Okay, and the mortgage is gonna be how many years? 30. We used to have to put in months back in the day. The rate here, this one is always a little bit different. We don't lock in the rate, our lenders lock in the rate. And normally they'll lock it in right before they think it's gonna go up before closing. Sometimes it's within about 5 days of closing or so. Sometimes your lenders will tell you, well, the current rate is 5.5. But your buyer can't go up past 6.5, so you might put 6.5 in there. Per market might work too. Okay, so we're gonna just go with 6.5 for today. Interest rates, who's gonna lock it in? Normally, it would be at any time prior to closing required by the lender, okay? So if this all got accepted and 3 days from now, the lender says, oh my God, we went from 5.5, we're down at 4%. The lender's probably gonna lock it up in case it's gonna move up all of a sudden too. Okay, if not, usually about the time of closing, within 5 days, they will go ahead and lock it in. That way they can wait till the last minute to lock it also. Mortgage financing. If your buyer cannot secure the financing, who do you want where this money to go back to? The buyer. Okay, you want to protect your client. So when you're writing this, you're protecting your buyer. When you're presenting it to your seller, you're protecting your seller. Okay. So you can do two things here on the mortgage financing. You can check up here. And of course it has to be forfeited. Financing to seller may be prohibited. So if you have these two, that's an escape clause that's built right into here. Get down here, or buyer shall provide licensee seller with a written statement on or before. A lender in the past always did a written statement, always within about a week or so before closing. Lenders are still, I believe, doing that, sending out a letter anyhow. So if you did go with number 74, let's move back up. There is a good chance that the lender is still going to send out the written statement. All right. So you can make the choice there, read through them, understand them. If a written statement is not provided, you would be filling this out because you did it up there. But just to make sure that I'm safe, I'm gonna check my buttons anyhow. So that goes back to my buyer. Lender work orders. A lot of times conventional might not have any work orders, but FHA could. Depends on the property. If you're on a property and there's a lot of chip paint around, for instance, around window seals and stuff like that, chances are in an FHA loan, the appraiser's gonna ask to have that fixed prior to closing. So you can put a dollar amount in there that you want to have a seller agree to pay. If you're walking to the property and you notice it's in really good condition, you don't see a lot of things that maybe a lender might require you to fix, put zero or put $100 in there just to cover something that may pop up. And that's just asking the seller to pay for that. This has nothing to do with your inspection on the home. This is a lender thing. And down here, buyer agrees to have a reinspection fee required by the buyer's lender. So if there is something with an inspection fee that needs to be redone with the appraisal, the buyer would cover that. Down below here on 127 is the clauses if you have the FHA financing. This one we're doing as a conventional, but you want to put a value of your 365 in there, that if the property appraised value as not less than. So if you put in here, you offer 365 and you put a price in there and it doesn't appraise out, the seller is willing to work with you on the price that it's appraised at, or they go their separate way. Okay, lender processing fee. This is only questions here that you would answer if you have the FHA and the VA. I don't know how many people have been coming through with FHA, VA financing lately. I've not seen a lot of it. I see more conventional from you guys. Okay, all right. I know it's out there, some of the VAs. I've not seen a lot of FHA. So if you get one of those, we can go through that. Line 157, excuse me. Seller's contribution. How many are you asking your buyer wants the seller to pay towards their closing costs? Yeah, I'm not sure if we're really seeing a lot of that out there now that the buyer is asking to have your fee paid. And so on here, your buyer would direct you whether or not you would want. So on this one here, we're just going to choose is not. And then you either put a dollar amount or you put a percentage in here. What's an average, closing cost? Anybody know?
3 to 5%.
Yeah, so what would you put in there to cover some of it?
After Alexis's,
Right.
Nexus,
Yeah.
0, no.
Yeah.
What, 4, maybe?
Yeah, you can, I mean, you can. Do you guys know what, let's say let's put the 4% in here. Do you guys know what's all covered in the closing costs? And why a seller may or may not pay that? A lot of times they might not pay that is because it's involving months of taxes that the buyer will be owing during the time that they live in the home, property taxes. It's gonna cover the buyer's insurance. It's gonna cover lender fees. The lender is buying points to get the interest rate down. So it's all in there. So if a seller is gonna pay that, they could be paying maybe the first year of the buyer's home insurance policy. Depending how, you know, that 4% or whatever goes in there. So keep that in mind when you're asking for all that stuff. There will be sellers out there that might ask you if the lender is using points. They might not want to pay for them. Okay.
I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense to use common sense when you're looking at that too. So that like, you know, if you know it's gonna be, you know, a larger house and it's gonna be, you know, like 4% is gonna be $15,000, maybe ask for 2%. And, you know, kind of talk to the agent and say you're willing to split the, you're gonna split the difference.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think they're more likely to accept it if you're up top, you're kind of saying, you know, you're not asking for the world, but you'd like to get something.
Right, because in the long run, when your seller is looking at this, they're looking at the price that you're offering to buy the
Minus.
property, minus the expense that they're paying their agent, and minus all the expenses that a buyer is asking for. You know, and that can be between the yes and no, the accepting your offer, or getting a counter.
So I think getting a little bit is better than getting a hard no.
Yeah. And it's always better to get a counter.
Yeah.
Because then you can counter back or walk away. I had a buyer walk away over $1,000 one time. We ended up going back 2 weeks and rewriting the offering that the house.
So the tricky part with that is try to help the seller offer a little bit more, but then the house needs to appraise at that amount.
Right. That's
So that the seller isn't necessarily losing as much.
as much, and you have to, I mean, we do our CMAs for our sellers, we're gonna do our CMAs for our buyers. You know, so they can write their offer. And the biggest thing is, yeah, it has to appraise out so that the loan goes through. You know, that's the big catch at the end. If the loan doesn't go through, neither one wins. Okay, inspections. The buyer. Do they want to do an inspection or do they want to decline?
I do one
I would
10
always,
days.
yes, I would always always suggest doing an inspection, even if the buyer wants to do one for their own interest. Okay? If it's an as-is property, from what I remember Alexis sharing one time, as-is starts when the house closes, so if there is something in the house at the time of inspection, you can ask to have that repaired or have it reduced in price. Okay, so always, this is really a big one. I know they have to pay somewhere between about $350 to $500 on the average, depending on your inspector, the size of the house, the location of the house, all goes into it. Because when they have to drive outside the Twin Cities, it might be a little bit more because of the mileage. But it's a peace of mind for your buyer to know what an inspector can see and what you can't see. It does not mean that they can go in and they can see that there's a crack in the flute on the furnace. Okay, only a repair person would probably see that.
Can I do something like on line 117?
Oh, sure, why not? Let's go backwards. Okay.
Connie, while you're scrolling back, what was that dollar amount you said that it might be for inspection? Maybe.
Oh, inspections, I think they run somewhere on the average of 350 to 500 or so.
Okay,
It
thank you.
depends on who you use, and like I said, it depends on where they have to go.
Yes.
Okay, looking,
What are you typically seeing there? Just $100?
$100 is just something to cover, just in case the lender says something has to be repaired on the property because the appraiser didn't like something.
Is that
So
realistic these days? $100?
I have no idea.
Okay, I just
I have
wonder
no
what you,
idea.
just wonder what you were saying.
I think I don't see that filled in probably as often as maybe we
Yeah.
might want to put something in there. But it's mainly more so for an FHA. Because if the appraisal doesn't appraise out for something that an FHA wants. Thank you. I bet you could hear. All right, so yeah, so always, you know. Here's- these are- what's the free home inspector list. Can I hear? Okay. Home inspector list for them to start doing a little research. Yes. And say, yes, I accept the property, or I'm gonna cancel the property. Huh? It's a hot market.
Depends.
It really, really depends.
7, I think. I mean, I usually would do like 7, just to give yourself enough time.
I used to do 7, now I do about 4, 3 to 4. Because all the buyer has to do is once the seller says this is accepted. And you call them and you have the signatures of the seller on the purchase agreement in front of you. As you tell your buyer, okay, call your inspector.
It go up pretty fast.
Yep, and they will. And if that inspector won't go, there's another one on the list. And if you run out of inspectors, we all know a whole slew of inspectors, okay?
Right.
So the shorter the time period sometimes is the best. Sometimes right down here in other inspection things, you can get away with a little bit longer timeline with this one. If you're gonna do a radon, okay, inspection. Because radon has to sit for so many days and then go off and be read. So that would buy you up to the 7 days probably. Okay.
One of the reasons I say 7 is because you have to rely on the other agent to get back to you when you're, after you send them the paperwork. And, I've had issues where sometimes they like to, they like to wait
Okay,
and not always send you the responses back.
okay.
And so,
See, when I've done my inspections, they've hired their inspector goes out to the MLS and books that appointment right away. Once they accept it. And an inspector looks, the fee is due upfront unless you work with a company that will collect at closing.
Hmm.
Okay,
you send an inspection and you put down all your stuff on the report that you want to fix. And you send it to them. And sometimes I've had them like kind of job me on a day or two and wait.
After the
Yeah,
inspection.
after you do.
after,
inspection.
okay, yeah,
After the inspection.
absolutely.
I send them the email and they decide they're gonna like just make me sit there and wait.
But that's where you can also send out, amend the contract. And say that the inspection is going to be extended, the period extended. Find your own words, not mine. And, until this date or whatever, here's a list and put on there.
I mean, the contract is a contract though, so they can just say no.
They could, or they could come back and amend that and say, my sellers will fix all this. And that, I mean, getting the inspection period over. Is the seller accepting to do the repairs?
Right.
And then that means as the seller is doing the repairs and promising to have them done before close, means the lender and the title people can move forward with their work.
Right.
Okay,
That's why we have to kind of do our part and try to manage our buyers. And make sure that they're not asking for like, like light bulb covers or like,
yeah,
just dumb things that aren't
right.
necessary.
I always talk to them,
Safety items and stuff like that versus,
put a smoke detector up. I probably would ask a seller to do that.
right,
Just to the fact that it has to pass the appraisal.
it's code, yeah.
And that's code, yeah, that's code to begin with, and then the appraiser. Putting up a handrail somewhere. You might have to have that done for the appraisal, but having some of these covers on, an appraiser might knock that down. If they knock too much down, the house is gonna break. So you wanna be nitpicky, but you don't wanna be too nitpicky.
Yes.
Okay. Also, mark your calendars for April 29th. We will be having in here a radon class. So, and you get a CE credit for that. And it's free.
Yes.
Okay. All right, sale buyer's property. On here, you would check the appropriate box. We're gonna pretend that's our buyer. does not have a house to sell, but number one would mean that there is a property that the buyer's already, it's contingency on that. Second one is where the property is located. If you are the seller, you wanna look up that property, you wanna make sure it's on the market, you wanna see that it is pending. You know, or it's in an inspection period. That helps the seller make up the decision of whether or not they're gonna accept the offer. You see how this whole form plays on both sides? Okay. Coming into taxes, what are you gonna do with property tax? You're gonna pretty much protect your buyer, so you're gonna go always probate from closing would be one, and then probate from closing. No, that would be 112. They changed the boxes here, so you can put in when they're gonna split it. Okay, depending on the month that's closing. So so the seller pays up to the date of close, and then the buyer picks up going forward. And whether or not the property is homesteaded, and if if it is non-homesteaded, the seller shall pay the difference. And I guess in today's world, it isn't too much of a difference in the price anymore, homestead, non-homestead property taxes.
216, 218 again.
Okay, go ahead.
What are we doing there? What are we doing here?
Buyer shall probate from the date of closing. Sorry, I'm flip. Seller shall probate from the date of closing.
Okay,
Sorry,
that makes sense.
I jumped to the all and then I backed up.
Yeah. then
Okay, yeah, because what you wanna do is the date of closing, the seller pays up to that date, the buyer goes forward, okay? Deferred taxes. Who's gonna pay the deferred tax special? You're gonna have to look and see if there is a deferred tax. If you don't see one, or if there isn't one, disclosed on the MLS, you're protecting your buyer, you're probably gonna check seller shall pay. Down here, any assessments was required to close, you could do from the date of close, or seller pays on the date of close. Choose the box that you would like to choose, depending on the property, okay? Because in here, we'll show you, see there's 0 assessments in here, but you can also go out to the county. You can also check with cities and stuff to find out if there is an assessment coming. All right. Who's gonna assume other special assessments on the date of closing? Your buyer's gonna own the home. Chances are your buyer's gonna pick up that new assessment. It might mean that in 6 months from now, they're gonna tear up the road and put a whole new road in. And your buyer's gonna get the use and enjoyment out of it for the next 25, 30 years. Buyer shall assume any levies, assessments that cannot be paid in that year of closing. You're gonna have to take a look at what that is for your client to take on, and then check either buyer shall or seller shall provide payment, okay? I'm just checking buyers for right now. When you're writing this purchase agreement here, has the listing agent come back and tell you that there's been a notice received by the seller. If you haven't heard anything, it would be has not. And here's where I jumped ahead. I don't know why they moved this way down here, but we're writing up this purchase agreement, and way back up around line 116 or so, we said that this is the first. Now they're asking you if you're writing a second purchase agreement. Well, this one here is the first one. If we would have wrote it one before and it was canceled or not accepted, then it would be your second one. I'm sorry, it is not. I'm not reading correctly today. And fill in the things. What kind of warranty deed do you want? Sorry, I gave that one away. Deed.
The warranty.
We want a warranty deed. However, when sometimes if you are working with a property that's in the state, there might be a personal deed representative, maybe a possible trustee deed that you'd get changed over to a warranty, deed, but just be aware of those. Okay, and of course, there's other deeds out there somewhere. That would be 260 down to 268, that we don't come across much. When do you wanna take closing? You're sitting at the closing table, when is your buyer gonna take control of the property? Normally it is immediately after closing.
They have like a home that it's,
Well, that's where sometimes when you're looking at what their home is and you're looking at the home that they're buying, is there a chance that the home they're buying needs a few days to move out? Okay, so that's where you could check other and then put those dates in. Okay, most people do take immediately after close because everybody is packed up and their trucks are sitting there and they're ready to go from A to B.
I don't know if I heard you correctly, but if the seller is waiting, is that what you were saying? Then we want a few days.
Sometimes, like if the seller's house isn't all packed up and looks like it can close in time, and you're not ready to go on your buy side, you might take possession a few days after close.
But we would want to,
You
just
normally-
hypothetically, want to say immediately, and then
Let them
if-
ask,
have them put that in the amendment. then-
right,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, it is a domino effect is what it is. My husband bought his house in Minneapolis and they closed, he had immediate. As he was bringing his stuff in the back door, the seller was going out the front door with their stuff. And technically, I mean, I don't know how well this would always hold up, but they always say that once the property has exchanged hands here in Minnesota and all the paperwork assigned, the buyer is now the physical owner with immediate possession. That means anything that was left on the property belongs to the new owner. So that means if the seller left their trailer in the driveway and then they were gonna go hook it up and take it to the next place, does that really belong to the buyer or do you let it go to the seller? You know, it's kind of like playing nice in the sandbox. And if you do have that, give that buyer's agent a call and say, you know what, we're closing. Is it okay if it sits there and we'll come pick it up after close? You know.
So for like situations like 273,
Okay, go ahead.
we put anything in there, or for the ones that we're not marking, we just leave it blank?
Just leave those ones blank. Yep, you're only filling in the ones, now like up back there where it was FHA, financing clauses and stuff like that. If you wanna make it look good and stand up more, you could draw the red line in there. And just make it look like, hey, you can just skip this section. Okay? But you don't have to do that. Unlike some other forms, we have to fill everything out. Okay, where were we? Okay. Just remember this here. Time is of the essence. We need to make sure that we're always moving correctly with our dates and that we don't stall out. The calculations of days are the calendar of business days. Business days are weekdays unless it's a holiday. Our calendar days include Sundays, Saturdays, Sundays, and state and holiday. So, and then it talks a little bit about here, the earnest money. You know, so if this is accepted, how many days you have to get it to the listing office? If you cancel it, how long does it take to get back to you? All right, and then down here, as Alexis has said, at least in the house, the seller's disclosure should be there for you to see when you're previewing the property. Hopefully it is in the listing up here so that your buyer can have this emailed over to them. Go into my downloads, probably did. Okay, so you know what a seller's disclosure is. The buyer needs to go ahead and read through that and sign it. And so this one here has said that, yes, they have received either the full disclosure. Come on, you're not checking. I'm spinning right now. Or that the alternative. The alternative is normally used when somebody has not lived on the property, an investor. Okay. If somebody hasn't lived on the property for some time and they're helping, they're selling to family members and stuff, they might want to try to disclose as much as they can. Somebody has lived on the property 50, 60 years, they may not remember everything that has happened on that property. So they're gonna be filling it out to the best of their knowledge. You know, did they have a hailstorm? Was the roof replaced? You know, was it an insurance company? What years? All that. I am still spinning. We're just gonna keep moving it down. I can't. Okay, there we go. All right. So then on here, we're basically all here in the city areas. However, you start getting out a little bit, mainly like in Lakeville, you might see septic in that. So on this one here, they have told us there is a septic. No, it's connected. So it's telling us that it's connected for the water and the sewer's connected, city's connected. If this doesn't talk about anything about septic or wells, or there wasn't any disclosures on it, then you would say does not know, private well does not know. If someone tells you that there's a capped well on the property, you'll find these kind of throughout the suburbs here. And they might be using them to water the lawn, then you do have to do the well map. You gotta get that from the listing agent. Purchase agreement is not subject to an addendum because when you're doing the does on here, then it's gonna be subject, otherwise it isn't. Home warranty plans. How many of you guys do home warranty plans? I know we're at the end of our hour here. It is a good idea when you first meet your buyers, even your sellers, to give them some information on the different home warranty plans. Let them decide if that's something they want. Sometimes the seller will plead for them and the buyer then gets it transferred to their name. Otherwise, a buyer can elect to buy one. So on the home warranty plan, you just check the box. I'm gonna say my buyer wants to buy it. And I'm gonna do this one instead. No home warranty plan. Why am I doing that? Because my buyer doesn't know if they want to buy one, but they can buy one up until close. Some home warranty plans will let you buy it after you're at the house. The only thing is if they want something fixed, it has to be in working order prior to the plan going into place. Okay, so take a look at some of those plans out there. There's Cinch, American Home Warranties, HWA are just a few. There's more than that. Otherwise, you can check in here. A home warranty plan wants to be paid by the seller. The buyer will determine who they want and a price, or the seller will decide, and the seller will decide who it is and what the price is. And then down here just talks whether or not the two agents that are involved in the contract. And I'm gonna make this quick for you guys. Line 406 you hear a lot about. And I think you've heard Alexis talk about. If you're a buyer's agent, this is where they suggest, or this is where you put in your compensation that your buyer's asking you to ask the seller to pay for your fee. Okay. Remember on your buyer's agreement, you put a 3% in there. So on here, we're gonna do a 2.7, then you can adjust. Now a seller can negotiate that with you. Okay, in this case here, because we picked on one of our office, we would have dual agency. Agent isn't in our office, it would not be dual agency. Buyer and sellers would sign for that. Okay, and then down here is other, if you wanna add any notes for stuff. You wanna add maybe more appliances in there, maybe you wanna, the shed. You can put those notes in there that you want with the property. Okay, and then addendums, any of these that you have filled out, you would check those boxes. And here, like contingency of a buyer's property, you would check that one because it was up there. Move-in agreement is a total separate agreement. We don't use those that much, but you would do that one. All right, and then down here, if you receive this back and it's not signed, but this box is checked, that means you have a counter offer. Okay? And then buyer signs, you send it over, seller signs, sends it over, there's no counter offer, someone has got to put a final acceptance date in here of when the two agree. And then down here is the opportunity that they both had the time to review arbitration. All right, and then the wire fraud. This is just one of the forms that we fill out, and this took a whole hour, but we can go over all the other forms that go with it another time. Okay, you guys have any questions? No? And that, I would say if you have time, practice, fill them out, go through them. It helps, even like with the buyer's agreements, the listing agreements, filling them out and erasing them and go back the next day, fill them out again. It just takes practice. And your entire purchase agreement is gonna decide on everything about the seller and what they're looking for. You know, you can think you have the best offer with 365 and somebody else can offer 365. And they might offer a shorter inspection period. You know, they might give seller time to move out, they might not want a home warranty. There could be 101 different reasons why they would accept somebody else's, or 101 reasons why they accept yours.
Connie?
Yeah.
Did you mention who decides the earnest money amount?
The earnest money,
Yes.
normally that is financing is about 3 to 3.5. Some will put down more to make their offer look better. That their buyer intends to be very interested in the property. That's why you want to make sure that you protect their earnest money going back to them if something would fall through.
Yes. Thank you.
And as Alexis has said too, in a lot of different trainings, is the money came from the buyer. If the seller and buyer choose to wind up in court and spend a lot more money to fight over who gets it, a judge most likely will give it back to a buyer because that's where it came from. All right. Anything else? Okay, if you guys have,
Oh, this is just,
okay,
these forms, where exactly are these located?
these are in that transaction desk.
On the MLS?
And the
Oh,
MLS.
that's,
Yeah.
oh, fine.
All our forms are there,
Okay.
but we've also made them available to you in the back of our website.
Okay.
Okay. If there was some, well, like last year, they started making a few changes on our input sheet, like in April. So then the most current input sheet was in the transaction desk in that. If they decide all of a sudden that they're gonna change forms on July
Once
1st,
she gets it done.
that's where all the updated stuff is.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Connie.
Yep, all right. Come find me.